Summer is here, and everything you need for adventure is waiting at shockshop.us. Gear up with camping essentials, stylish bathing suits for fun in the sun, reliable generators for every outdoor trip, kayaks, dinghies, and water toys for non-stop excitement. From backyard fun to lakeside escapes, shackshop.us has it all. Shop the summer sale now and save big at shackshop.us.
For months, political leaders, economists, business organizations, and voters across Switzerland debated a question that touched nearly every aspect of the country's future. How many people should Switzerland allow within its borders? The question may sound simple, but it carried enormous implications. The answer would affect immigration policy, economic growth, labor shortages, housing availability, infrastructure planning, relations with the European Union, and even Switzerland's identity as a nation. When voters finally headed to the polls, they delivered a decision that many observers described as one of the most significant political moments in recent Swiss history. The proposal was rejected. The result ended an ambitious attempt to impose a strict population ceiling on Switzerland and prevented a chain of political consequences that could have dramatically altered the country's relationship with Europe. Yet while the proposal failed, the vote revealed something equally important. A substantial portion of the population supported the initiative, demonstrating that concerns surrounding migration, housing, and population growth remain powerful political forces inside one of Europe's most prosperous nations. The referendum may be over. The debate is not. A proposal unlike any other. The measure put before Swiss voters was unusual, not only because of its content, but because of its scope. Rather than focusing exclusively on immigration numbers, asylum rules, or border controls, the initiative sought to establish a hard population target. Supporters argued that Switzerland should not exceed 10 million residents by the year 2050. At first glance, the figure appeared distant. Switzerland's population currently stands at approximately 9.1 million people. However, demographic projections suggested continued growth in the coming decades. Supporters of the initiative argued that waiting until the country actually reached 10 million residents would be too late. They claimed action needed to begin immediately. Under the proposal, the federal government would have been required to take steps once the population reached 9.5 million people. Those steps could have included tighter immigration controls, restrictions on residency permits, limitations on family reunification, and changes to asylum policies. Critics said these measures would have fundamentally altered Switzerland's approach to migration. Supporters insisted they were necessary to preserve quality of life. The disagreement would become one of the most heated political battles Switzerland had experienced in years. The party behind the initiative driving the proposal was the Swiss People's Party, commonly known by its German-language acronym, SVP. The party has long been one of the most influential forces in Swiss politics. For decades, it has campaigned on issues involving national sovereignty, immigration control, border security, and Swiss independence from outside influence. The SVP's leadership argued that rapid population growth was creating serious pressures across the country. Party representatives pointed to increasing housing costs. They highlighted congestion on roads and public transportation systems. They warned about strain on schools, hospitals, and social services. They also raised concerns about environmental pressures resulting from continued development. According to supporters, Switzerland's relatively small geographic size made the issue especially urgent. They argued that there were physical limits to how much growth the country could absorb without sacrificing living standards. Campaign materials frequently emphasized crowded trains, rising rents, traffic congestion, and disappearing green spaces. Supporters claimed these were not isolated issues. Instead, they argued they were symptoms of a larger demographic challenge. The solution, they said, was a clear and enforceable population limit. Why immigration became central to the debate. Although the referendum focused on population, immigration quickly became the central issue. Switzerland has experienced significant population growth over the past 2 decades. A major factor has been immigration from European Union member states. Under agreements with the EU, citizens from participating countries enjoy extensive rights to live and work in Switzerland. These arrangements have helped businesses recruit workers and fill labor shortages. They have also contributed to economic growth. However, critics argue that these policies have accelerated population increases beyond sustainable levels. Supporters of the referendum repeatedly pointed to demographic trends since the implementation of free movement agreements in the early 2000s. During that period, Switzerland's population expanded considerably. At the same time, the economy also grew significantly. This created a political divide. One side viewed population growth as evidence of economic success. The other viewed it as evidence of mounting pressure on infrastructure and resources. That disagreement became the foundation of the referendum campaign. The European Union factor. Perhaps the most dramatic aspect of the proposal involves Switzerland's relationship with the European Union. Switzerland is not an EU member. However, it maintains extensive economic ties with the bloc through a network of agreements. One of the most important agreements concerns the free movement of people. Under the referendum proposal, exceeding the population target could have forced the Swiss government to terminate that agreement. Such a move would have triggered consequences far beyond immigration policy. Economists warned it could disrupt access to the European single market. Businesses feared uncertainty for investment and hiring. Trade organizations expressed concern that Switzerland's competitiveness could suffer. Political analysts suggested the proposal carried echoes of Britain's Brexit debate. Just as Brexit raised questions about sovereignty, immigration, and economic integration, Switzerland's referendum touched on many of the same themes. This comparison led some commentators to describe the vote as a potential Swiss Brexit. Supporters rejected that label. Opponents embraced it as a warning. Either way, the comparison helped attract international attention. Why many Swiss voters said no. When ballots were counted, a majority of voters rejected the proposal. The outcome reflected a coalition of concerns that extended beyond immigration itself. Many voters agreed that population growth presents challenges. However, they remained unconvinced that the proposed solution was practical. One major concern involved the economy. Switzerland relies heavily on foreign workers. Hospitals, research institutions, universities, technology companies, manufacturing firms, and service industries all employ substantial numbers of international staff. Business leaders warned that severe restrictions could create labor shortages. Healthcare providers raised similar concerns. Switzerland already faces challenges in recruiting enough nurses, caregivers, and medical professionals. Critics argued that limiting population growth could worsen those shortages. For many voters, these concerns carried significant weight. The prospect of reduced access to workers raised questions about economic stability and future prosperity. The housing question. Ironically, housing affordability was one of the strongest arguments used by supporters and one of the most complicated issues facing opponents. Many Swiss residents have experienced rising housing costs. Demand has increased in major urban centers. Rental prices have climbed. Competition for available housing has intensified. Supporters argued that slowing population growth would ease pressure on the housing market. Opponents countered that housing shortages are driven by multiple factors: construction policies, zoning regulations, land availability, and investment patterns all influence prices. They argued that simply limiting population growth would not automatically solve the problem. Instead, they called for housing reforms and infrastructure investment. For many voters, the issue became a choice between two competing explanations for the same challenge. Was immigration the primary cause, or was the situation more complex? The answer often depended on political perspective.